In this video I'm going to continue modeling the Samaritan. I'm going to move on to the barrel piece here. And I'm going to do the main barrel, not including the sights or these pieces down here, but it's going to be this main piece here, this thing that looks like a contiguous piece that goes over the hinge and then goes all the way back here, but it has this slide piece sort of tacked on the outside as well. I'm not going to do those detail pieces. I'm going to just concentrate on the main form here and try to show you some different techniques to tackle these beveled edges and that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and start this one from the front. Create a cylinder here, and it needs to be 8 sides, and it needs to be oriented down Z. Move that up. Don't want to move this on X. I'm going to end up trying to do this thing with symmetry, so I can just only have to concentrate on one side of it. Orientation of this cylinder looks wrong. That's pretty much it right there, so let's make sure that's mathematically correct. That way the mirror operation will work well. So that's looking pretty good. The width is pretty dang close. The height is very slightly off, so maybe this thing is not exactly round, or maybe that's distortion in the image, I'm not sure, but the amount that I just had to scale that is relatively inconsequential, I would think. So that should be looking pretty good. Double check this thing from the side. Grab these verts and just move them out to the end. Where the end is exactly is somewhat difficult to tell, but I'm just going to guess somewhere around there. And then this piece here doesn't need to go all the way back. It basically just needs to come back to here, where this piece is going to continue down the side. And at this point, I might as well go ahead and split this in half, so I only have to deal with half like I was saying before. And probably the easiest way to do that is going to be use the Cut Faces tool and set it to YZ, as you can see here. Say Cut. And then you just want to double check that your center is actually on 0, and it is, so we're good. Let's switch to faces mode and delete those faces out. So I'm just dealing with half of this thing. I won't need these back here, these will just get in my way, so just get rid of those. And then what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to break this piece off. I could extrude this from here, and I'm going to end up with creating some odd geometry. So the easiest thing is going to be just break this off into its own plane, and then I'll combine it back in a little bit. So a nice way to do that is extract. So just choose extract, and that will just, like I say, break that off into its own object. That way they don't share any verts or anything like that. I'll go ahead and grab this edge, extrude that out. Be aware of tolerances. Even though you don't see a seam here, again, that's perspective that's getting in your way. There does need to be a little bit of an area for that thing to be able to rotate, so a little bit of a gap happen there. Do the same thing here. Just grab those, press G. In this case, just scale them up and out of the way, something like that. Looks like those should probably end up somewhere around here. I can go back and snap that into place in the end. Okay, so now you have several different ways that you could approach making this curve. You could just add points in by hand, and that would actually be fine. I don't really think it would cause too many problems, but you could also do that with a bevel. So I'll just show you one of each just so you can get a sense of it. So the first way would be just do an interactive split. Probably want to keep pretty low magnet tolerance. That should actually be fine. Get back out of the way. So I just want to start in a corner here and then just drag out a few points. So I'm just going to use Y to snap those out. And I'll start moving these things to get this set up right. So, boy, I just really stink with this mouse still. Okay, pull this out. Got an extra button in, and I just can't get used to the fact that it's there. Okay, so that's probably okay. Maybe I could use one more span in here just to sort of clean that up just a little bit. So I'll go ahead and interactive split that one more time and just leave that one there, and then I'll just redistribute these guys. So the by hand method is pretty fast, especially dealing with low poly like this. Really no big deal. Just had a few things to lay out, so just double check what that's looking like. That curve feels pretty good. I think if anything it feels like it could ease in just a little bit more when I look at that in the shaded mode, so I'll just move that down just a little bit. That feels like a little bit better ease happening on that curve. So the other one we'll do with the bevel. And in order to do this with the bevel, we actually need an edge. So we need some depth to this thing. So I'll just go ahead and extrude this whole thing and just pull it in. And notice everything turns black. When I did my extrude, it went the opposite direction, so I need to reverse the normals. Like that. Grab that edge right there, and go back to the side, and this time choose bevel. Take a look at this here. We're going to need to increase the offset, so I'll just do that with virtual sliders here. That looks pretty good. And add in some segments to this thing. So, alright, that's looking okay. The curve, the amount of curve to this thing is actually slightly different. So this one is a little softer curve. This one, it goes a bit deeper. So what I want to do is grab the roundness and drive that value. But notice that it doesn't do anything. So this is because AutoFit is turned on. So you have to actually turn AutoFit off. Then you can grab the roundness value and drive that up to whatever you want. So in this case, that gives me what I'm looking for. This kind of thing here happens with bevels, with Maya sometimes. So you just need to reapply the material. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just the material is sort of absent. So that gives us this. And that looks pretty good. That's a nice clean line. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 4 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4 segments. So it should be pretty good. This actually has this little extra tab here, but I don't really think that's going to be part of the bevel. That's going to end up moving down further. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now basically all I need to do is get rid of this center line. Just take this back, and all the depth, we'll get rid of that. So I'll just double click that, kill that whole sheet. And then this whole thing needs to be cleaned up because it's just a huge mess. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab those two verts and just snap them over to that point there and just merge that. So that'll clean that up. This whole thing, it's going to be a big flat end-on, so it's really no problem if these things aren't here. In fact, neither one of those verts really even need to be there. So if I delete those, this will be just a big end-on, and it'll triangulate however it wants to triangulate, and that should be fine. Sometimes you have to kill these things individually because it sees like a connection between them. So that looks good. So now we have a nice clean piece of geometry. And then what we're going to need to do is start figuring out how this connection happens in here. And it looks like what happens is this piece actually bends out and touches at this vert. So this piece is going to come up and bend out to here, and it sort of has a curvature that comes up to a point, a single point right around there. So I'll go ahead and just combine these together and merge those verts just to get this thing back to a single piece. Again, nice low tolerance on those verts. They won't merge back completely right now. It did merge in here, but these pieces haven't been lined up quite yet, so they won't merge quite right. I'll go ahead and do this from the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a split face actually on this, just because it'll be a little easier to see what's happening. And I can terminate it into a corner. So I'll start at the corner, come out, and then up here, like that. And then I'll do the same thing up here. I'm just going to line these bevels up by hand. And I'm just going to be pretty sloppy about it for now because I'm going to end up coming back in here and aligning those to that vert manually anyways. There we go. So basically, double check this from the side. Basically what it should be is, this should actually be down a bit from where it is. Pull this down. This piece is going to end up being extruded down to here, so I might as well just go ahead and put it there. And where this bevel stops, I'd like that to be in line with this right here. Even though there's a little bit of a notch here, this is going to be close enough, and we'll save a little bit of geometry just by pushing that down just a hair. So I'll just redistribute just a little bit based on that. Shouldn't change the profile too much. And then I'll get rid of this face here, and I'll snap that vert into place there. So you can see what's starting to happen is this piece here is going to flare up to here, and you can already see it. It's just basically doesn't have the correct curvature yet. So like I said, I'll go ahead and add that in now. Just an interactive split tool here. Don't have to be terribly accurate with this. I'll just try to get a general placement and then come back and fix it. And I do just want to match resolution with what I have up here. So again, from the side here, sometimes this makes sense to go ahead and try to snap align these with their neighbor on top. So like that. This way I'll have nice clean topology. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull these down, just soften that in, so sort of ease the curve in. And I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to look like, but I'll say maybe something like that. I don't think we'll see this area all that dominantly anyway, so honestly I don't think it makes all that much difference. Go ahead and grab those verts again, and now this edge should merge, which it did. And now I'll go ahead and append a poly everything else into place here. So I should probably be able to get away with a single span here, but if it doesn't look right, then we'll come back and add another span of geometry. Oops, wrong key. Okay, so something like that. Looking pretty good. If it was softened in there, I think it would be just fine. I'll grab those and just soften those. Just use the up arrow, by the way, to grab those. Looks good. So that's what I want that to look like. Just do the same thing now up here. Basically just grab that guy. And let me double check that height. So these are actually remarkably close already. I'm just going to go ahead and move this one up, since this one's determined by the barrel itself. And this is the arbitrary one in this case. And snap this guy into place. Should be nice and flat. It is. And go ahead and cut those guys. Whoops, sometimes that happens where basically it looks like I think Maya was trying to snap that in line with some other object that was behind where I was trying to connect. That kind of thing happens. You just got to change your view angle just very slightly and try it again, and usually that'll pick it up and work fine. So again, I'll just make sure that those verts basically align with their downstairs neighbors at this point. So snap align those. Oops. Man, I am a stinky klutz with this thing. Okay, so that looks like that's going to work fine. Gosh, that curve almost worked out on its own. I don't really have to do all that much to this. But once I adjust those on Z, I don't want to mess with that. So obviously all of my curve is going to come from alterations on X, which is what I just did. So now I want to go ahead and do my append to polygon. It's a shift right click menu right there. And I'm just pressing the enter key at the end of this and then immediately picking up with Y. Works well. And then this guy here, still being border edge, let me just go ahead and try to merge those now. I may have mistakenly not snapped those aligned, but it looks like that looks good. So I'll go ahead and do that again here. Just press up, grab those, and soften them out. Double check what that's looking like. Okay, so that's looking really good. I did accidentally grab these edges, and that's why there's that. Notice this weird shading where it gets dark here. That's just because it's trying to soften around a 90-degree angle. So I'll just reharden those since my edge ring selection grabbed them. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We'll take a look at this thing again from the side. And now we'll want to start building this piece. So to do that, I'm actually going to work in depth here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an outline of that shape with this part of the face here. So I'm just going to go do a series of extrusions to create that shape. And I'm just going to snap align this, just holding V down. Again, back to the side. Press G to repeat that action. It looks like that action was lost, so I'll do this again. Something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and do another bevel in here to create that edge. So I'll just press G again, should repeat, G again. So just keep pressing G all the way around this thing. Okay, at this point, probably what I'll do is I'll just leave this and I'll come back and fill it in just a minute. So I'll just leave something there for myself. Same goes there. And this one here needs to snap in line with that vert. And then G, snap that up to that vert. So basically I just created an outline of this thing, and I'm just going to end up doing a fill hole in the end when that sorts out. So in fact I'll actually need to do one more extrusion up here and just snap a line. Whoops, looks like I just did two more extrusions. Maybe a lot more than two. Okay, there we go. So let me go ahead and grab this guy and do extrude. I had my finger on the G key accidentally when I was trying to press V, and I think I did about 10 different extrusions there. Okay, so that looks fine. And I'm going to go ahead and merge verts in case I have a bunch of edges sitting on top of each other right over there. Just choose merge. Okay, everything merged down nice and neat. So now it's time to start taking care of the problem areas. Not really problems, but things that are unresolved, like that curve right there. So for that guy, we'll go ahead and do a bevel and up the offset to 100%, it looks like, and then add a few segments. In this case, you can see it's actually going the wrong direction. And I'm going to ultimately, I'll have to clean this one up anyways, but this is the same thing. You need to turn auto fit off, then turn roundness to a negative value, something like this. And like I say, I'm going to have to tweak out the top one, it looks like anyway. So I think that's fine. This does add these little faces. I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. And then I'll just make the little adjustment so this turns into more of an S curve. And actually it looks like, to make this look like a really effective S curve, it'd probably be worth my while just to push that up one more level. So I'll go back to that bevel, and instead of 3 segments, I'm going to set that to 4. And with that segment, I'll be able to sort of get a little bit more softening happening. I'll go ahead and get rid of those faces again just so they don't get in the way. So push this back, and then this guy can go up and soften that edge quite a lot. And then this one's actually looking like it's pretty much in the right place, so I'm just going to redistribute all this back a little bit. And then I'll soften this one just a little bit like that. Okay, so it's kind of a S-curve feel now. I think that's probably pretty close to what it's supposed to look like. Same thing. This is just a goof of my, so just go ahead and reapply that material. Everything should work out fine. And let me see what else needs to be done on this. So this would need to get filled. This whole thing here, we got to take care of that. So I'm going to go ahead and snap these guys in line there and there. And in fact, all of these I'm just going to snap in line with wherever that vert ends up being. So right there, so it should be exactly the same on the front and the back of that cylinder, and it looks like it is. Got a connection point right there and right there. So that looks good. So now what I need to do is add the number of verts in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verts. So I need to add that number in here. So an easy way to do that is to use the insert edge loop tool and just use the multiple edge loop option and just set that up to whatever you need. In this case I did need 5, so just click it like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and snap those into place, and I'll just do one at a time here. And the thing you need to be careful of is don't use the center manipulator. That will snap everything into one point. Don't want that. But if you just use one axis at a time, it works fine. So I'll use Y and then Z, Y and then Z. And the way the snap works in Maya is you just have to put the mouse over the vert that you intend to snap to. Looks like I didn't get that quite on Y. Okay, so now those are exactly in line with that hinge. Let me go ahead and see what that is looking like. Okay, so here we have an established gap between these pieces here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and basically try to maintain that. So I'm just going to grab the verts of this, all of them, and then I'm going to align the temporary pivot point. You have to select your tool first, and then D for the pivot point, and then V to lock that. And I just want to snap it down. It's already basically centered, you can see right there. So I just want to snap it down to the center there, and then just blow that up a little bit. That's just going to give me the appropriate gap around the whole thing. Looks like it's going to work fine. So basically now I can go into my perspective, double click that border edge. It should only select this one. So none of the rest of the border edges, just this one because it's a closed form, and then just fill a hole. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so there was one little thing up here that we got to take care of on this piece. This little guy right here. And basically to do this, I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece. Just going to go ahead and select all of the faces here, and then do the interactive mode of the cut faces tool. Enter it, and go ahead and drop that right around there. And again, because that face selection is active, it's only going to cut that face. So that's good. And now this thing should look pretty good with a bevel. So just grab that edge there, and then come back in and give it a bevel. So that looks pretty close. Let me double check what this is doing from other angles. Okay, looking pretty good. Let's tweak out the bevel and see if that works for the whole form. Just add a couple segments here. Okay, so it's going the wrong direction. So that's problem number one. I'm sure we'll run into some more. So let me go ahead and reverse this thing. So again, just turn that off, grab my roundness, and then drive that backwards. So it looks like that's the way it should be going, something like that, like a inset. So that's looking pretty good. As my offset looks pretty appropriate, so I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm just going to delete out these faces down here, including this little extra tag on face that the bevel created. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to bevel this direction as well and see if that helps smooth this form out a bit. So just shift right click, choose bevel. That looks pretty good. That's definitely helping smooth the thing out. Add another segment, should be only an improvement. Okay, so I think that's probably pretty good. Check this from the side again. The offset, yeah, it looks like this could probably just use a little bit of an adjustment by hand. This is going to be hard to do since it's on two different directions, but here your choices are say that looks good enough and leave it alone, or potentially just readjust that just subtly by hand. And I'll just go ahead and go with the readjustment by hand just to get a sense here. And for that, basically what I'll do is select the verts, select my scale tool, and then snap that temporary pivot point down, and then just scale that up. So something like this. And I do want to stay a little bit below. So something like that. Again, every single time you're going to have to readjust. So I'll go ahead and do that. Something like that. It's looking pretty good. In fact, looking at this thing now, this stays flat all the way up to here. So this line is basically not even helping our cause. So I have two options. Get rid of this one, just insert a new line, or just readjust where everything's sitting. So in this case, I'm just going to snap these guys into a line. This will look better if everything's snap aligned anyways. So I'll leave maybe that one vert, and I just deselect the one vert that I want it to snap to, and there we go. Okay, and now I'm just going to move these guys down here to help that curve out a little bit. So that's going to look pretty good. I'll just shrink that one down just a little bit, and I think I'll be in business. Okay, so there we go. Push that out. And now this whole span here can just basically come down just a bit. Okay, so that's a nice looking curve. From here, it seems to match the reference image pretty well, and it looks pretty good. So again, I just need to go ahead and do a soften harden here. Okay, left a bunch of ugly geometry. These are flat faces. Again, they can be n-gons with no real harm. The one thing you have to watch out for with n-gons is sometimes when they get triangulated by an engine, the engine will mess it up. So you want to go ahead and typically do a triangulate before you export to engine, depending on what engine you're working with. But sometimes what it'll do is if you have a really complex form, it will actually sort of get a triangle that goes over a space that's supposed to be a hole or something like that. Okay, so that's looking good. That's nice and clean. This back here, I'm just going to press Shift I and see what we got going back here. A little bit of a shading problem here. Oh, I see. That's just because the smoothing angle is a little bit too high for this piece. So these guys are softening down when they should remain hardened. So you see how much hardened edges actually help your object, knowing where to put in your hardened edges. This one does not need to be here. This is not altering the form whatsoever. I do not need those. I could triangulate that down to here, but again, I don't really need to. It'll look nice and clean like this. So now I need to add this piece back in, and I could do that with a couple different ways. Like I could use an append to poly and then a fill hole, which is what I'll do, or I could fill or do an append to poly out here and then just fill this whole hole. But I'll just go ahead and do it like this, and just do append to poly, this guy to this guy, and then double click that border edge, and again use a fill hole. That way you don't have to do append to poly a bunch of times, since ultimately I don't want those edges anyways. So just fill hole, grab that edge, and then I can just press delete. So you don't have to use the delete edge if you want to maintain both vertices on the ends of the edge. Okay, so that piece is looking good. I'm going to press Shift I again to see where we are. Okay, looking pretty nice. Now I need to move on with this piece here. So let's see what this is looking like at the top. So it looks like just over, probably, I can't tell exactly what's happening here. It looks like there's a little additional thickness to this thing starting at this point. So maybe what I need to do is actually add a span here, because I don't think this thing would go up at all based on where the barrel is. There was like the little sight above it, but I need a piece to connect back to here. So let me see what that's looking like. It really does look like it's just starting right here, but let me take a look at the reference. Okay, good. I'm glad I did that. You can see here, this is what I was missing. This thing flares up right there, and I don't have that piece. It's this piece right here. So I need to add another level up, and then that whole piece gets pushed back to make this piece here. So I'll go ahead and do that. And in this case, I guess I'm going to go ahead and add a triangle up to here, again with the interactive split tool. You see why only doing half of this thing makes sense. You just don't want to have to repeat the same action over and over and over again. Okay, so just pull that back there to about that width. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add this poly here, so I can just do an extrusion on the whole face, I think. So just do append to poly across here. Sometimes if you don't hit an edge just right, it'll sort of give you that shooting off to nowhere thing, which is not awesome. Okay, now these guys don't need to be here. And I do need to do one cut across. So I think I could have done that a little bit more efficiently than I did, but this is going to work anyways, so that's fine. Okay, double check that that is actually all in line. I'll just snap that and move it back to where it's supposed to go just to make sure I have everything lined up right. And go ahead and grab that face, do an extrude on that face. I'll come back and bevel that edge there. Grab that face, extrusion on that. And back here is another bit of variation at the clasp area. Let's see if we can find that in the reference. Okay, so here it is here. It looks like this piece is just going to kind of stop, and there'll be this other piece that comes out of that. So I'm going to tackle that in another video as well. I think this one's getting pretty long, so I'll just finish this piece up, and we'll come back and clean that up in a little bit. Grab that edge, do the bevel, add some more segments to the bevel. Maybe just 2 segments is enough. We're really zoomed in here, so I think that's going to look fine. Don't need that edge, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those edges. And I think that the difference in those angles is based on the perspective that we're actually seeing them from. So I think that's probably looking okay. This is just an ugly piece that I don't need to look at. Those separations don't bother me, it looks fine. Okay, so I think that is basically wrapping this piece up. But there's kind of a major hiccup right there. Okay, so we've got a sizing issue because let's take a look at the reference. Okay, so this one shows it just fine. Basically, this is all one plane. All of this stuff is one plane. And what we have here is discrepancy. So this guy's right. I just did that. This thing's probably wrong. So let's take a look at this from the front. I see. Okay, so here's what the problem is I misunderstood this model when I was starting it. This piece right here, I had noticed that that's actually inset. Let's see if we can find another image of that. It's not a great shot of it, which is probably why I misunderstood it. This is inset here, so the full thickness of this, where everything is supposed to be modeled to that plane, I actually did it to this because based on the front view it looked like that's what I needed to align it to, but I just didn't pay enough attention. So now it's cleanup time. So I need to scale this out and this stuff too, since I made this relative width based on this. And then the handle will get messed up because it matches in here, so this is kind of turning into a turd. And this guy, but that guy doesn't matter quite as much. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just group these, and this way I'll just scale that whole group. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab on this guy some edges. So just shift double click the edges and then turn my soft selection on, change my size to try to make this thing as seamless as possible when I do this scale. Okay, I think that's all I need to have selected. Looks good. So I'll go ahead and scale that up to where it matches the other piece. It's really close. That's close enough that I feel good about that. And the handle is not looking too bad, actually. Okay, so I didn't want to scale the whole handle because, again, this is supposed to look like a perfect round handle. So it's actually not nearly as bad as I expected it to be. Okay, so this still should join perfectly because the border edges were maintained. This thing may need to have some subtle touches done to it to clean it up a little bit. Like for instance, these taper in pretty hard right here. This might be a place where I'm just going to turn that reflection on. Just go ahead and taper that out just a little bit. So just changing this form ever so slightly to allow for the adjustment that I just did. It actually looks pretty good. I'm surprised. So I think we're going to call that all right. Take a look. Okay, we're getting there. So I think the barrel's looking pretty good. Looks like there's too much of a gap up here. We need to do something about that. Maybe scale it up. Maybe what it is this piece here. This piece here looks like it needs to come down a bit anyways. So that may have been something from the, whoops, turn reflection off, turn soft selection off. So it might have been sort of a perspective thing that I saw. So let me just see how that looks from the side. I'll make sure I'm a little too close right now, it looks like. I'm going to give that thing a little bit of breathing room, something like that. Check what that's doing. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Again, that clasp piece is going to come on there, and I'll have to do some more detailing. But I'm going to leave it like this for this video. I think this piece is looking pretty good. Needs to be detailed, and then I'm actually going to have to make a variation on this side. So I'll just pick that up in another video when I'm doing the details.